a little bit too eager in terms of their chances and their possibilities in the race. And
We've been joined by a man. I don't know.
Singularity Racing, obviously.
Singularity Racing.
I'm crashing your stream now.
Hello.
Well, literally earlier.
Yeah. So, may you please introduce yourself?
My name is Dennis Lind, driver of the Hydra.
We've got
sorry,
Dennis
wow.
Lind.
I'm tired. Singularity Racing, Hypercar.
Yeah. And currently in the overall lead, so we can actually, what we can do is as soon as possible get your car also on the screens. And Dennis, you are a Lamborghini factory driver outside of this virtual hobby. Can it be called a hobby of yours?
Well, obviously I'm a big simulation enthusiast, I would call it. So I'm just here with all the other guys enjoying my hobby. So yeah, so far it's going pretty well for us, I would say. We're leading. And,
there's been a crash. There's a black and white BMW, just it's the BDR car, number 76. I'll just tee up the replay for that one. We can get a look at exactly what happened there.
And get analysis from Dennis, maybe.
Okay.
So,
you're a professional racing driver.
Just give me a heads up when you got it up and running. And
yeah, it's running now. If you want to just flick across to the car, it's come out of the forward chicane, heading towards turn 1. There's a couple of cars off to the left, heading into the pit lane as BDR takes the wide entry into the first corner. He's just locked the rear brakes, and that's
a big one.
That's a biggie.
That is quite a biggie indeed.
I mean, that's a simulated accident, and he's just driven away as if nothing has happened. But in an actual crash in a car in real life, does it
another
happen?
one? It does happen. It seemed like he just braked a little bit too late and was surprised and locked the rear brakes just on the turn-in, basically. So it's a bit of a weird corner for the GTs because you come off weight on the rear, really, and if you start braking hard, you're completely leaning to the left with the car, and you want to go right. You want to go left, but you're leaning to the right. So he was locking up, coming into the corner a bit too late braking there, I think, for the BDR car.
Because we see all the time now, you crash a car, you get out, you walk away. Do you keep the helmet on because you're trying to hide the grimace in your face of going, ow, that actually really hurt?
Sometimes, yeah, but no, cars are really safe now. You do have crashes where you hurt yourself a bit, but you know, cars are pretty solid now, and they can stand a whole lot of stuff. We've seen cars going, for example, this Le Mans race last year. I think we had the Rebellion car going nose first into the second chicane, I think, and it was out driving again after 5 minutes after they just rebolted the front end, and that was a pretty hard hit. So a bit like we saw with the BMW just then.
So when you're doing a real 24-hour race, how do you get that little bit of a kick with all the noise going on? Do you just sit in a chair and just snooze, or do you have your own private little Dennis Lind gaff that you go to and just you get to...
Actually, I get my whole VIP for myself. I have service people running with me for water and stuff. And no, not at all. I sit in the garage.
You have your butlers.
I have my butlers. No, I'm sitting in the garage because I can't leave, you know, the team. You're so into it, and if you're for my personal opinion, I don't like leaving the garage at all. Barcelona was the most recent 24-hour race I did, and I couldn't leave the garage. I was told to go sleep in the truck. I had 5 minutes, and then I got back in the garage, and they asked me what I was doing there, and I said I can't sleep.
Yeah.
So I fell asleep in the garage and slept for a solid 1 hour.
Wow.
That's quite noisy. It's quite noisy.
I've been in with Rookie Monsters a couple of times. They've had a guy sleeping in the back of a Transit just to try and get a couple of minutes of sleep to himself.
Every minute counts here.
Yeah.
Really, I think most of the guys right now, I was just checking in the tent and they were all sleeping. So I should probably go and take over for Jordy. He's going to get in the car soon, so he's going to have some sleep. But now we're just rotating drivers. We're on the second rotation now since the server reboot. So yeah, everything is going pretty well for us. We had a small crash with our LMP2, the Hydra LMP2, and that was a bit long in the pit lane, to be honest. So it seems like they have some drag issues now, so they're a bit down on top speed, but it seems like they can match pace of the leading car. So we have to look into the strategy now, and that's where the big sheets come into play.
Speaking of strategy, Dennis, I've been actually talking to a lot of the Coanda guys, we are kind of SimSport guys who are chasing your hypercar. We had wonderful shots of here, you driving away from David Williams as fast as possible. Now, Coanda said, like a bit maybe under the table, that we might reschedule some of the driver stints in the upcoming hours, meaning that there's a possibility of deviating from the first plan and having drivers like Jeremy Bootloop and Matti Pietilä heading into the car. Are you scared?
Of course. I mean, I'm first of all very stoked and a bit starstruck to see big teams like Coanda coming into an event like this.
Really?
Yeah,
You're
honestly,
a star.
because I watch quite a lot of the races on iRacing, and I see them doing really well. They're one of the big teams there, so I would probably say it this way: if we were in iRacing right now, we would probably have our cake sliced out for us, to say it nicely. So I think they're doing a really, really good job. So big shout out to them actually for being in the position that they are. They're doing a really, really good job. And yes, we are afraid. We are very afraid because we know what they're capable of.
One question I want to ask you, and you've probably been asked this a million times before, because you're a real racing driver, and we hear all the time, R-Factor 2, realism. How realistic are these cars?
I think they're doing a pretty good job with it. Obviously, I've never driven a hypercar like the Senna GTR, but from like a setup,
my job for me now.
from a setup point of view, I mean they're pretty good. We can see a lot of stuff in the telemetry that makes sense also to the real world. So in that sense, it's quite good, I would say.
It is very good. I was at some point when we are not in a less official place and in less official time, I'm going to ask from you some opinions regarding difference between different simulators. I don't want to ask that right now because
That's okay.
Because we don't know if Marcel's listening.
Oh no, Marcel is a great friend of me, and I think he would love to hear my opinion. But yeah, that's maybe for another time.
Yeah. So, what are the great improvements regarding? You think it's very good right now. Simulation is doing a really good job. What are some of the things that you would like to see from the perspective of a real racing driver?
Well, it's hard to say because right now it's the whole immersion sort of aspect that we're missing a bit, and it's just the small bits and pieces that sometimes don't make sense and then other times make great sense. We can always run into trouble in sort of the software, hardware issues that we don't have in real life, but you know, it's hard to say. It's hard to pinpoint exactly what the problem is, but there are things that don't make sense, and it's all about finding those key factors.
Well, next time you're in the rig, I'll blast you with a hairdryer and chuck dead bugs in your face.
That would be great.
Yeah, full immersion.
Great. Yeah, full immersion. Kick me in the back sometimes when I'm jumping over curbs.
I'll try and break your neck as you go through the corners.
Please don't.
So, how about virtual reality? Have you had a chance to experience VR properly yet? And what do you think about the possibilities of that regarding bringing immersion to sim racing?
I think it's very good. It's very good. I have an Oculus set at home. The only problem for me is this famous screen wall that everyone is talking about. That this you can't really see that far ahead, and it gets a little bit sort of low resolution. But I'm pretty sure that when VR is so good that you are seeing sort of 1440p, then you're pretty much there, because you get a completely different sense of speed and completely different sense of size of what you're sitting in. And that's sort of the main problem. We are testing this currently actually with simulators around the world, with people who can't really get this sense of speed. For racing drivers to get into a simulator for the first time is hilarious, Like you see them do some crazy stuff, like braking at 50 meters, doing 300 kilometers an hour into a hairpin, because they can't get the sense of speed.
Yeah.
Put a VR headset on them, and suddenly they're braking at the right point.
Yeah, and I know now what my friends mean when sim racing friends mean when they say VR made me slower.
Yeah.
VR makes me sick.
Me too. I was playing flight simulators mostly with my VR, and that was a bit of a handful to start with.
That's because I've got these goggles on as well. I've got to take them off and I can't focus on them. It's madness.
Oh, but imagine how brilliant it would be to fly like those combat simulators.
That's
like
what I did. That's what I did. I was on Warthon. I think I did like 300 hours doing simulation combats with old planes. Very interesting. Yeah.
So does that help you as a racing driver?
Not at all. It's good procrastinating, I would say. Yeah,
so it's not like combat simulation out there on the racetrack.
No, not really. I've used it a little bit for some tracks because it helps you a little bit with some braking points and markers. Some tracks are really highly detailed now, so you actually get a bit of sense of where, you know, different toilets are stood on the side of the track, so you can use that as a reference when you're on the real one. But yeah, that's about it for now. I mean, when you use I think the Primax is the best one now, I've heard. That one should have really good graphics, but I haven't tried it myself. I just know the Oculus is not really good enough yet.
Yeah, the Pimax has been really highly thought of, and there is also a couple of other ones coming into market. I know from Finland there's coming Varjo, which means shadow, coming into the market. That's I think that's 8K or something.
Yeah.
And now that is absolutely excellent, and also, at least right now, from the perspective of a humble commentator, and from also a perspective of a humble working man, it would be outrageously expensive. That is not something that's gonna come into a normal home. Finally, I think something I will be really interested in is how excited are you to see the possibilities of one day sim racing being used as a proper driver academy, and the possibilities of sim racing in driver education.
It's already being used now. We are, I can't really say, but we are developing quite a lot of stuff before we actually put it on the road to, you know, simulate gear ratios, for example, bits and pieces where to place different stuff. So it's already being used, and you can see with many of the new sort of simulation championships, they're putting people in real cars. So, you know, we're getting closer and closer to that transition between, you know, instead of going in from go-karts into racing, you might start, just maybe if you're lucky enough, be good enough, come through simulations into real world racing.
Yeah, and that's something that really excites me, because karting, of course, not cheap.
No, it's very expensive. Like everything, every time you have to put gasoline or new tires on something, it's very expensive, and also damages. I mean, the only way you can learn is by putting it in a wall sometimes, and that can be expensive. But on the simulator, you have the privilege of just pressing escape and trying again until you get it right.
You think that can also be a bad thing?
If you use it in the wrong way, yes. But I think if you in some simulations you have the possibility of sort of retrying sections of a track, so that I've known some companies that just train one section of a track and they make an infinite loop of, for example, the first sector of Suzuka. So you just go through 1,000 laps of sector 1 in Suzuka through the S's.
Yeah, that's called the Suzuka East configuration.
Exactly, but you just go through the Dunlop, I think, and then you come back onto the straight.
Oh, right.
So you end up in an infinite loop that don't really make sense when you see it from exterior, but when you're driving it, you sort of get that feeling imprinted into your brain, and you keep doing it over and over until you nail it.
Yeah, and that's something that's, you know, really can be used, because of course in real life you don't have the chance of just cutting the track halfway through, warping back to the start-finish line. And also there's things in real life, such as, I know from Finnish point of view and also Danish point of view, there's this thing called winter. That's gonna hinder driver education a little bit.
Right. And testing bans.
Yeah. So, for example, I know that I got one friend, actually a couple of friends who are racing or were karting drivers into a youth coming from the Finnish Lapland. Now, Finnish Lapland has snow about 5 months a year. That's gonna hurt karting training. So later on they went on to do sim racing, but there's actually some really good drivers sailing from even the north, but the possibilities for their practice will be basically endless come sim racing. Do you think the advent of sim racing in driver training is gonna actually increase the average quality of a driver once they get to compete more in racing situations more often, like passing, overtaking, and side-by-side racing? They get to actually practice that.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's something that helped me a lot. I've been involved in sim racing since 2007, and I used to be a teammate of David Williams before he got really big, and he was a lot faster than me back then. I hope I'm a little bit quicker than him now, but at least back then he was one of the big stars. So it's something that you sort of learn from people with more experience when you're sim racing all the time, and you really have to grow and develop as a driver, both in strategy. You have to grow in terms of racecraft, and also having composure. And that's something that I've been working on a lot with the composure, because I think the pace was there quite early, but the composure itself hasn't. And that's something that really sort of started to work out for me the last, I would say, 6-7 years maybe.
Young karting driver or a young sim racing driver, let's say someone who's 12-13, competing in just their first races, comes up to you, Dennis Lind, coming to ask for advice. Hey Dennis, you've been competing worldwide. What are the things that one needs to keep in mind that are universally applicable?
Be patient. Be very patient. Listen. Look. I think that's the best I can give. If you see, it's also a big thing about being humble. I mean, if you see someone going quicker than you, maybe it's because they're doing something different. They might not be better than you as a driver, but they might just have a different skill set at this given time.
Oh, good point about that. Ego. As a racing drivers have an ego. We know racing drivers absolutely love to have excuses. Like every time you're slower than somebody, there's something wrong with the car. How important is confidence to a driver, and how can you learn confidence?
I think insight is very important. Insight is very important. I mean, you have to be aware of when you're making mistakes. I think it's very easy to blame the car. I mean, I've locked my brakes many times and spun out where I've blamed the car, but where I've really just braked 5 meters too late. And those are the things that you learn with experience. I mean, and that's just the young, how do you put it, like the will to always go quicker and maybe overlooking a few important details that might hinder you from that progress. Might be ego. So, yeah, like you said, it's something that has to come with experience.
Yeah. Well, Aidan?
No, I've got no more questions. I've always wanted to ask an actual racing driver the whole realism debate, so I've got the bit I needed.
And we got some quotes.
And we got some quotes.
Quotes?
Yeah, I'm gonna turn these back on you in Discord later.
Well, to end it off, I would like to say thanks to GTR 24 Hours. I would like to thank John and Peter. They have done a great job with the difficulties they've had in this race, and I think they've pulled it off A+. Honestly, I think, and also the whole venue with the nice big screens where you can see what's going on. The commentator's done a good job. So I know he's hiding somewhere here in the back.
Out there somewhere.
Maybe, but thumbs up to him. And yeah, I hope to see more successful this event. We have bigger teams coming in. We have more teams coming in. It's very exciting times. So I really hope that we get the joint success that everyone deserves here.
Yeah. Thank you, Dennis Lind, once more. That is Dennis Lind from the number 30.
Have a good night.
Yeah,
we will.
The racing car, driving the hypercars. And he did a very, very great job of explaining about everything. And also a really sweaty handshake right there.
Yeah,
that's a racing driver's handshake.
It's Dennis Lind, man. Come on. I'm never washing this hand again.